Welcome to another session of Active Teaching Lab for February 16th, 2021. Today we are welcoming Sarah Refrigetti, Michael Coker, Sierra Kane, and Lori Marks to talk about facilitating student community-based service learning. We also have a discussion on Canvas collaborations from our own Kathy Penkowski. So turning it over to Sarah.
Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here. So let me just start with a few questions to get you thinking. So if you want to go to our first slide. So as you're thinking, how can we make our content relevant to students? How can we help students connect what they're learning here with what's out there in the quote unquote real world? Although this is a real world too. How can students connect with each other and the community in mutually beneficial ways? Well, today, 4 of us are here to talk to you a little bit about our experiences with community-based service learning, which is one really powerful way to answer these questions. My name is Sarah Refrigetti. I'm with the Department of Communication, and I'm going to spend some time just talking initially about our goals for service learning and briefly what we did. Lori Marks is here joining us from the UWM Center for Community-Based Learning, and she will talk a little bit about her office and how she partners with community members to bring collaborations onto campus. And then Cody Coker and Sierra Kane are instructors that implemented community service-based learning in their interviewing courses under my course direction. And so they're going to share some of the challenges and the opportunities that they got from the experiences, and then we'll answer some questions that you might have. All right, so Elaine, can you go to the next slide? So we had multiple goals when we decided we wanted to think about implementing service learning. And I always start with my student learning outcomes. So Cody was instrumental in working with me and actually Samantha Sepulveda a year ago to come up with these student learning outcomes. And then this year we tried to implement the service learning with them. So the goals for the Communication 300 course, which is interviewers and interviewing, are that students should be able to identify fundamental characteristics of interviews and apply various interpersonal models, conduct research pertinent to different interview structures, including informational, employment, and survey interviews, distinguish, apply, and participate in different interview structures, including informational, employment, and survey interviews, recognize and adapt verbal and nonverbal communication to common perceptions of culture, gender, age, and race throughout various interviews, and practice communication competence, both appropriateness and effectiveness, and ethical communication by crafting questions that avoid common question pitfalls. So as I look at these student learning outcomes, what we want students to do is take the tangible, concrete skills that they're learning in our class and learn how to apply them. So it made a lot of sense as I talked to Cody and Sierra and I said, hey, we should do this experience with community-based service learning because so many of these student learning outcomes will allow students to experience interviewing with community partners, and while doing so, we can give back to the community. Another thing that we were thinking about was students, because of COVID-19, were feeling really disconnected and isolated. And so by connecting with community partners and giving back to the community and also creating a way that students could connect with each other, we were hoping that that would help them feel more connected to the class, to each other, and to the community. We also know that the UWM vision statement says that we will work with the community. So the vision statement is we will be a top-tier research university that is the best place to learn and work for students, faculty, and staff, and that is a leading driver for sustainable prosperity. We will accomplish this through a commitment of excellence, powerful ideas, community, global engagement, and collaborative partnerships. So as you can see, as we were thinking about, okay, why should we incorporate community-based service learning, everything seemed to align. There are two other reasons why it makes a lot of sense. The National Association for Colleges and Employers, in their 2018 Job Outlook survey said, employers said, beyond a strong GPA, the two most important skills that students can learn are problem solving and an ability to work in a team. And so knowing that we could give students experiences that would give them those tangible skills, we felt like this was a really good opportunity to pursue. And then finally, I was just really excited to collaborate with Lori and other community partners. Milwaukee is such a rich area and people are so generous in working with the university and working with students that I thought that would be really rich. And beyond that, I really wanted Cody and Sierra to have this experience facilitating service learning because I think it's going to help them on the job market as we see more universities with a public outreach. This is going to give them the necessary skills pedagogically to talk about as they go on the job market. So very briefly, what did we do? So students in this course are learning about interviewing, and oftentimes we think immediately, oh, interviewing, that must mean job interviews. But in fact, interviewing is a skill that cuts across a lot of things. And so what we did was we worked very closely with Lori, who connected us with community partners that had a problem that they wanted to learn more information about. And then we met with those partners and we described what we wanted to do with the students, which essentially was we were going to have the partner be the student's so-called client, and the partner would meet with the students. The students would conduct an informational interview with that community partner to understand what their need was. And then the students would develop a survey interview, so a second kind of interview that connects directly with those student learning outcomes, to ascertain information for people that the community partner wanted them to talk with. So the students would have two opportunities to interview, first with the community partner and then with multiple people in the community to then report back what they found from those interviews to the partner. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori, and she can talk a little bit about her role in this and how her office plays a part in this type of work. Lane, can you advance the slide, please?
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. So the Center for Community-Based Learning, Leadership, and Research, we're often called the Siebler Office. Our job is really to help faculty, staff, and students help the university fulfill its civic mission. And in terms of service learning, we do this. There's over 3,000 students a year who are registered for a course that has a service learning component. So this is pretty widespread across campus. Essentially, what my office does is we try to take all the barriers out of the work for all the parties involved, for the faculty, for the students, and for the community partners. And oftentimes what this looks like, and in the case of this particular course, is we reached out to our existing set of, we have about 165 nonprofits we work with. We reached out to them and asked, you know, is there something that a group of students doing interviewing might do that would benefit your agency? And they fill out a little RFP form, and then we get a group of, as Sarah mentioned, quote unquote clients through that process. It's sort of our job then to be the matchmaker and the facilitator of the meeting. I like to think of myself as a matchmaker for, you know, the public good. So essentially what we do then is we connect the faculty members or the other instructors with the community partner to really work out the details. I just want to mention a few of the important pieces as we go through this process. one of the things that my department really is focused on, like laser focused on, is balancing student learning with community impact. So, it's really important for us to maintain those 165 partnerships to make sure that it's worthwhile for the nonprofits that we work with. On the other side of that coin is it's really important that deep student learning occur. And so one of the challenges that, we face, but that, we all face, the instructors, the community partners, is how do you work with nonprofits, relinquish some control to them so that they can serve as co-educators to our students, and also ensure that the students have meaningful learning and are having, an impact in the agency. And part of how we do that is through things like having the students, training them to communicate with the nonprofits professionally, encourage instructors to engage in some of the best practices, such as offering credit during the course for very specific tasks related to whatever project they're working on for the partnership, even to selecting a partnership. We encourage the faculty members to really focus in on sort of these milestones, to break it down for the students, and also to make sure these things get done, because it's really important to the community partner. And then the other piece I'll mention in terms of sort of the best practices is really training faculty to ensure that the students are doing formative reflection throughout the process, as well as sort of a summative reflective process or project. And this is really critical because oftentimes faculty members can catch missteps as they're happening. They can guide students through the projects, and they can just really play a role in connecting the content of the course with what's happening at the site. And then finally, I'll just offer that one of the things that my office does is we often serve as sort of a mediator when issues arise or things need to be worked out. And oftentimes a translator of sorts between the language and the calendars and the way of doing business in higher education as it connects to the work in the community.
Lane, can you advance the slide? And Cody, I think you're up next. Oh, no, Sierra, you're up next.
Yes, hi, I'm Sierra. So I'll be talking about some challenges that we noticed with students ghosting and partner turnover. So there are always risks to doing group work, but we also learn there are risks in working with community partners. Throughout the semester, both Cody and I experienced numerous students ghosting or stopping participating in their group work. This caused more problems than the usual group work since community partners were relying on groups for work. Students were also relying on community partners, and therefore when one community partner stopped engaging with their student group, this caused some problems for that specific group. Another challenge was online overwhelm. So when working with community partners, this requires a lot of coordination with our students. The medium of online teaching and communicating with students means that they are definitely more prone to experiencing information overload. This was a catch-22 since students needed to understand and read our descriptions of the assignments, but because of the nature of all online courses, they could have experienced an overload with all the other classes that they're taking online as well. And although Cody and I did our best to offer both oral communication in the form of videos and written communication through announcements and emails, it seemed that oftentimes the information would go in one ear and out the other. Another challenge we had was coordinating group work. As previously stated, this assignment did require a lot of coordination. Students found it difficult to meet with each other in an online format. This was a challenge since our class was technically listed as asynchronous. And although we emailed our students prior to the course to let them know that there would be a couple of synchronous meetings to meet with their community partners and group members. The problem here was that we couldn't provide them with class time to work with their group they've experienced in person or even with synchronous classes. So this might have caused problems in terms of students connecting with their peers and ensuring all work was allocated equally among group members. Another challenge was experience teaching this course. So for me personally, this was my first semester teaching this course, which was quite overwhelming. So having to learn the new material on top of having to work with community partners at that time was a struggle for me. But luckily I had a great support system through Sarah, Cody, and Lori, so I was able to get through it. However, it is important to recognize that my experiences and struggles may have differed from Cody's experiences and struggles since this was his second year teaching the course. And I'm now going to pass it on to Cody to talk about the last challenge.
Thanks, Sierra. Hey, everyone. My name is Cody. So our community partners had different projects for their student teams, and some of our sections had as many as 5 or 6 community partners working with students. So we had 5 or 6 groups working with distinct community partners with different goals. So you can see how that might get a little bit messy at times, and you definitely have to be comfortable with that messiness. And so they not only had different projects for the students, but they had different ways of approaching their teaching, their learning, as well as their communication with their individual groups. So some of our community partners were great at keeping in touch with the students, whereas others had a lot on their plates with the pandemic. And so it was a little more difficult for them to make their meetings or give feedback for a lot of those students. So others were, a little rough around their edge, and so we often had to step in and mediate the relationship between the student and the community partner. And Lori, as she mentioned, she was definitely a great mediator for a lot of these tensions as well. So as instructors, we had to give up a considerable amount of control when you worked with the community partners, and that's definitely something you have to kind of lean into and be comfortable with. And it was uncomfortable for us since we had a lot of control in our classes before embarking on this experience. But it can be super fruitful and provide students with those real world experiences. At the same time, it's difficult to navigate learning objectives and standardize the course expectations. So for these reasons, regular communication with the students and the community partners is necessary, as well as some flexible grading. And we're going to get into, actually on this slide, some things that we would keep and change as sort of recommendations for you all as you start your courses with community-based learning. So the first one is providing big picture and detailed flowcharts for the students and the community partners. So we came to this realization after realizing that communication became an issue in asynchronous courses with community partners, because there were essentially 3 parties involved. So the first party being Sierra and I, as well as Sarah and Lori in the Siebler office, the second party being the students, and the third party being the community partners. So you can see how easy it would be for one party to get off track, and how once that one party gets off track, how that could confuse another party. Even among the students, if one student got off track, they were somehow able to convince their other group members that they were off track, and then it would just go all sorts of haywire from then on. So we not only geared our discussion boards toward building material around each of the 6 phases in the project, but we also decided to develop these big picture and detailed flowcharts. So Lane, if you could advance to the next slide, we have an example of this. So as you can see, we take the students through the 6 phases of what our project was, and this is specific to our project. And we provided more information about each process while retaining a lot of those nitty-gritty details, because releasing the amount of information that it was necessary to facilitate this project would have been overwhelming to the students. So these flowcharts let students know exactly what they would have experienced at each phase, and we also used hypothetical examples to show students how each step progressed to the next step. On the next slide, Lane, you can see some of these examples. I believe we used the Red Cross as an example. So if the Red Cross were your community partner, what you would be doing exactly in each phase. We feel this did help show students what they should be expecting along the way while retaining a lot of those details that would have been overwhelming. But in hindsight, it would have also been important and helpful to provide this to the community partners as well, because the community partners might fall behind or they might get ahead of themselves. So I think distinct flowcharts for each party involved would really keep everyone on track. Next slide, please. Another challenge we experienced was time. So it would have also been helpful to have synchronous or hybrid meetings to understand how the students were doing and intervene if things got derailed. So, conducting a service learning project can get a little bit messy, as we all mentioned, and especially with the asynchronous formats. In the asynchronous formats, we can provide them with the material, but we can't necessarily understand if they're really taking in that material as we might in a synchronous or hybrid meeting. We might also recommend scheduling meetings with community partners throughout the semester to check on their experiences and respond to any questions they have. We met with each of them before the start of the semester and we gave them all of the details, including syllabus at the beginning of the semester. But I think regular check-ins with community partners would have made sure that everyone was on track and helped us intervene when things got derailed so that they didn't confuse our students or the students didn't confuse them. And then finally, it's also important to note when this project occurs in the semester. So we chose to do this project at the beginning of the semester for a lot of reasons. One of them being weather. Our students were out conducting interviews sometimes, so we didn't want it to be too cold. The community partners had different projects and expectations, so that's how we made our decision. But really, it might have been a little bit better to do the project in the latter half of the semester so that the students are more comfortable with the course design, their classmates, the instructor, and it would provide the instructor more time to prepare the students for their service learning project. So those are a couple of challenges we had with time and some recommendations. Sierra is going to talk about one more challenge.
So another thing that was definitely a challenge was just like this discomfort and uncertainty that students felt with this project. So some things that we would keep and change relate to proactive communication of discomfort. So Cody and I realized that we needed to be better, prep our students with their own feelings of discomfort and uncertainty prior to this assignment. Because they're working with student groups, new community partners, and interviewing strangers, this can cause a lot of anxiety and uncertainty for what to expect. In the future, we plan on discussing the importance of leaning in with the uncertainty and discomfort and explaining how oftentimes some of our best learning experiences and insights foster from these feelings of discomfort. Another thing is creating opportunities for grace. As we all know, times are tough right now, and even with the vaccine, we anticipate the virus will continue to impact our students' lives. Many times, Cody and I had students who were struggling with things outside of the classroom. Despite this being a group project, we tried to create opportunities for grace by extending group project deadlines when needed and even creating individual products when students felt like they could not keep up with their group projects. However, in the future, more open communication with our community partners is going to be useful when creating these opportunities for grace. Last but not least is journaling and reflection. Both Cody and our students reflect and understand their experiences. Although we only had our students write one reflection at the end of their project, something we would change is to add in more journals so students can write through their experiences. We've come to realize that reflections can help students embrace and understand how these experiences with community partners relate to class content. And it can also provide us as instructors a way to better grasp how each student is handling the project. And yeah, I think that's it. If you want to go to the next slide, I believe.
Sierra and Cody, before we move to questions, do you want to just briefly share with the group how students experience the service learning in the end? Thinking about those
Sure.
reflections, just to kind of sum up, like bring everything full circle.
Right, right. So as Sierra and Sarah mentioned, we did have the students reflect on their experiences, and throughout the semester, it did seem a little bit tense at different moments. So the students seemed frustrated at times, they seemed confused. They weren't necessarily embracing the ambiguity of the situation, and that was terrifying for Sierra and I because we thought our class was going totally wrong. But after talking to Sarah and Lori throughout the semester, they, would emphasize that later on in the semester, the students are going to appreciate their experiences. And we were able to attest to that with that final reflection because the students really spoke very positively about their experiences. Many of them noting that this was the only experience they had across their college education where they were able to interact with a community member, a community partner. They felt like it was a good networking experience, and they enjoyed the quote unquote real world applied experiences that this project gave them.
Thank you, Cody. Lane, should we turn it over to you? Do you want to read the questions in the chat, or do you want me to read them?
Sure, I can do that. I got to earn my keep somehow today. So I see a question from. Well, I'll just say first a comment from Anne Radant. It's like active learning in general. Telling students up front that it might not feel productive, but they are learning through the struggle definitely helps. And I just wanted to add on to Anne's comment there that that's one of the things I was writing down as well. And I don't know if you made this into a learning objective, but it felt like, one of your learning objectives was be okay with discomfort, and that there's something to be learned through by working through that discomfort, that it's okay to be uncomfortable about this. And I think, just looking back at my own undergraduate career, if I had been, I always hated group projects. I always felt uncomfortable being around new people and trying to, interact and figure out how they operate. But if that was something that was like, that's okay, that's natural, I think that would have helped me move through it. So I think that was something that was really, really stuck out to me about your project, is that, you're talking about it's, people are having to move through discomfort, and that's okay. So that was really cool. Well, Lori and Laura Taylor asks, any suggestions for how to better prep students for uncertainty and discomfort? So just what we're talking about. And then I'll get to Lori's question.
I can speak to that preparation piece a bit. It really can vary from class to class. However, one of the things that we really try to emphasize to student service learners is that this is as much an opportunity for them to give to the community through service, which is where their mind goes when they hear that they're going to do service learning. But it's also really a reciprocal relationship, and it's understood by the community partners that part of the university's purpose in engaging in this practice is so that they can learn and develop skills. And I think that can alleviate some of the discomfort because they then can enter the relationship with humility, but they can also understand that they're not expected to be, an expert in whatever their service they're going to engage with.
I think another thing that, yeah, I totally agree, Lori. And I think another thing that Cody and Sierra did particularly well was to scaffold the work so that the grading was, in some cases, you just need to do this and you're going to get most of the points. And so by scaffolding it and helping them know, like, we're here, we're working with you, you're going to do this in steps. It's a big thing, but especially once they started to share that kind of workflow and big picture so that the steps started to make sense, that really helped students with a little bit of that uncertainty and discomfort. And I think probably we need to talk with students about how productive that discomfort is. Because throughout their lives, they're going to do lots of things that are hard. And if they're doing things that are always easy, they're not going to grow. And so talking about this as a growth opportunity where they can learn and they have the safety net of this is for a class, this doesn't mean you'll be fired for a job, right? This is a class and you have small stakes assignments and you'll get through it, and helping them understand how grappling with that discomfort now is going to help them in the future, I think can go a long way.
Oh, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. One thing that I just wanted to also add, because I also teach public speaking, and obviously a lot of students feel uncomfortable public speaking, and I've always found, and what I try to do for this class as well, is to really create like a very supportive community, not only with myself and my students, but also knowing, trying to cultivate a community where like students feel like they also have each other's backs, and it's okay to mess up because we've all been there, and essentially, we're all human and we all make mistakes, kind of thing.
And I'll just piggyback on that real quick, because I think an opportunity that Sierra and I had in this class was for us to also be vulnerable with our students at times. One of I think a fallacy is that the instructor is always prepared and knows exactly how everything is going to unfold. And so when our students saw that this was equally ambiguous and uncertain for us, I think it helped for them to understand that we were all in this process together. So I think there can be something gained from being vulnerable with your students and meeting them where they are.
Thank you all. And I'm just going to ask a follow-up with kind of what we've been talking about. And as I was taking notes throughout all of your presentations today, one of the things that kept hitting to me is that you aren't just talking to the students and the community members, but really your students, about the end goal. It's not just about the project, about the summative aspect. There's a larger, like the metacognition of what are we doing? Why are we doing it the way we are doing it? What are we learning through this process? Asking students to reflect upon what they're doing and why they're doing it and what they're going to get out of it in the future. Like, talking about how interviewing skills and collaboration and team building is something that employers are constantly asking for. Talking about how it's okay to be uncomfortable and how you can learn from that discomfort. Was that something that you thought was, you think that's really important for just any project, or is that, what do you think the extent of the importance of that is? Any of you guys? Any of you?
Lori really touched on it when she was talking about just the importance of journaling and reflecting, and Cody and Sierra also talked about that a little bit. But I would say meta-communicating with your students about why the assignments they're doing is important in any class for any topic. If we're setting clear student learning objectives, we want to align our coursework towards those learning objectives to help them understand why the things that they're doing are not busy work, because right now students feel like anything they do that's small is busy work. And so helping them see the connection between the small pieces to the bigger pieces to how that's helping them accomplish the goals of the course is so just central in their learning. So yes, I think talking about why they're doing what they're doing is really important.
Yeah, the busy work. I love that comment right there. That's one of the things that I would hear a lot on projects is, this is just busy work. But if you explain to them why, that kind of goes away. That's awesome. Thank you. Samantha, thank you so much for your patience. Please go.
I hope everybody can hear me. Okay, fantastic. Yes. Well, thank you so much for this presentation. It's been so helpful. I've never even considered using a flow chart for introducing a service learning project, much less any other project. So I'm definitely going to be putting that into practice. My question is, How do we get students to first recognize the value of collaboration? I feel like that's like that sort of first step to getting to this step of a service learning project. Um, is it as simple as sharing reports and statistics, such as the one that Dr. Raffagetti mentioned at the beginning, that this is what employers look for? Or are there other tips and active things that you do to get your students to first recognize the value of collaboration?
I can speak a little bit to that. A lot of the courses that have service learning components at UWM, and I think this is true everywhere, they really, the service learning portion of the course is generally aimed at developing professional skills, soft skills, and multicultural competencies. This is pretty across the board. Technical skills are oftentimes woven into that, as was this class, right? Because they were learning how to do like the method of interviewing. But you can tell from this discussion that the components about just communicating in order to set up meetings and other pieces like this, problem solving in the workplace, collaborative work. I think it's really important to outline those things to students and talk about the disconnect and being willing to acknowledge the disconnect in what industries are telling us, how well we're preparing students versus what they're experiencing with new graduates. I can't tell you how many faculty members end up at my doorstep because they're close to their industry. So, a nursing professor will, she's not looking for me to teach her students nursing or give her experiences to teach them nursing. What she'll say is like, the hospitals are saying our students need better cross-cultural communication skills. And so really communicating those very specific needs is important at the front end of these projects. Now, it's still going to cause discomfort, but I think articulating what you hope they get out of it is really critical.
Thank you, Lori. I see one more question in the queue here from Michael Wilson. And then with that, we're going to turn it over to Kathy. But Michael writes, could you talk about how you prepare students for diversity and cross-cultural issues?
Lori, do you want to take that one?
Yeah.
So one of the things that my office does is we host a pre-service learning session that we encourage faculty members to send their students to. And again, we encourage the faculty members to give the students credit for attending. And it's called Beyond Service. One of the goals of this session is to give students space to talk about their fears in working in communities that they're unfamiliar with. Oftentimes, they may be working in an environment where they are the first time in their lives a minority. And so we just really encourage faculty members to engage students in either that Beyond Service session or to reach out to us. We have lots of resources. There's plenty of resources that exist about preparing students to enter communities. We want them to do it with humility. We want them to have a certain amount of communication skills as they enter, because we need them to help us maintain the partnership for future courses. So I think, not shying away from those discussions is really critical, and helping students learn about the context of the service that they're in. So they're not just going into a, school with, walls and working with the children at that school. They're working with families, and the families are also part of the community. And this is sort of the makeup of the community in which the school sits. So really helping students understand the context of the environment that they're in.
And Lane, I know you're gonna move us along, but let me put in just a shameless plug for Lori's office. Her orientation to working with these community partners rather than doing onto the communities and also working with the students is just phenomenal. And she is an amazing resource. And for those of you that want to brainstorm ideas, I cannot recommend her more highly. She's just fantastic. So if you have an opportunity to work with Lori or work with her office, I've been nothing but impressed. And I would just recommend that you at least consider how this might be incorporated in small ways or large ways in your courses.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for that. And thank you also, Lori, and thank you so much as Cody and Sierra. I really appreciate all the work that obviously went into your presentation. I would be happy to stick around a little bit later if any of you have time, and if there's more questions, we can definitely get to those then. I did want to get make sure we had time for Kathy's presentation on collaborations. So we're talking about collaborations and student work and student projects, and I just wanted to today we're talking with Kathy and Ed. We're thinking about how can they collaborate in this synchronous online environment? How can they collaborate well? And what tools can they use to make this happen? And so Kathy has graciously agreed to talk to us a little bit about that. Take it away, Kathy.
Thanks for having me, Lane. Can everybody hear me? Lane, yes?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I have been using collaborative documents for a very long time, and I was excited to see when I started using Canvas that they do have collaborations. At first, it was a little tricky, but it has really gotten smooth now. So what I mean by collaborations, and I'll show you how to make these are Office 365 documents. So this is basically hooking things up to your OneDrive account as a teacher and your student's OneDrive account. One reason I had not liked creating collaborative documents in the past is if I'd ask a student to create either a Google Doc or one of the Office 365 docs and share it with me, it always felt like a third of the class would not be sharing it correctly. I couldn't see it at all. I'd have to request access, or I'd say, no, I asked for edit access for this, et cetera, et cetera. And with collaborations here, it really streamlines that process. So there's not a lot of room for confusion and everyone knows how to find their documents. I'm going to quickly show how you would enable this in your class. You'd go to Settings, and you'd make sure that you're on the Navigation tab, and I already have mine here, but you'd pull up Collaborations and make sure to save. At that point, you and your students can get to the Collaborations navigation feature in your Canvas course, and you'll be able to access it. Everyone, you and whoever you invite, will be able to access the document here or in your OneDrive, whatever is easier, but I'm telling you this is easier. And the other thing I'd recommend if you're having people do this, remind them to use the browser when making edits. It just makes things a little more streamlined. So I'm going to show you how to create one of these. I'm going to click Collaborations, and I would click the plus collaboration button, and then I decide, well, what do we want here? Do we want an Excel spreadsheet? Maybe I want the students, since we were talking about the service learning, maybe I want to put a template in here of Excel for them to track their hours. The nice thing about this is that as the instructor, I always have access to this, and so does whatever student I invite. So it's not the whole class, it's just a particular student. And if I wanted to be really fancy, I could even go into my OneDrive and invite someone from the community also, someone that the student's working with to also put in hours and things like that. But they can also create a Word document, PowerPoint. I'm just going to create Word. Something to keep in mind, I would really name the document once, because I can't type and talk. I have renamed it through Canvas in the past, and it only renames the Canvas instance. If you look on your OneDrive, it's still the old file name. So really make sure you are putting a good file name in here. I would put the student's name, because it's easier for you to find later. You can give a description of this, and then you can either invite single people, I could invite just Ed, or I could invite Ed and a student, another student, so both of them would be working on this document. Or if there were groups set up, I could invite the entire group on this. So I'm going to click Save. And this will, Ed will get an email notification that there's a document that he'll be working on with me. We did this earlier, and you can see the times. If I click on this, Ed and I both typed in here. Sorry, my computer's running slowly today, but while I'm waiting for this to appear, all the student has to do, or you, is click Edit Document. I can, as an instructor, type inline in here. Okay, my computer's running really slowly because I'm sharing the screen. But I can type anywhere in here and they could see it. I could decide to type right in the document or put those nice comments. There it is. So I'd go Edit Document, Edit. And I can watch what the student's typing. If I wanted, I could put something in here, maybe in red. If you don't like comments, I like putting in comments, so I might highlight something and click Review New Comment and say yes, and also consider. And then Ed could reply to me. We could have a series of comments. So I see a lot of people using this as a working document. So it's really good for an assignment that you are scaffolding, where you can create a template for the student, and then they're filling out one part, you are giving them feedback, then they're filling out another part, you're giving them feedback, and so on. And don't worry, I am going to show you a way that the students can turn this in and you can get this in the gradebook. But it's nice to be able to have this dialogue along the side. And once the student has resolved it, they could click Resolve Thread. I have had students do that, and I look at it, it is not resolved to my satisfaction, so I will unresolve it and put it back down saying, no, I need you to do this a little further. Feel free, Ed or Lane, to read any questions to me. I heard a question.
Yes.
So while I'm, go ahead. Yes.
Kathy, so as you're there, if you could go back to that Word doc again. I'm sorry, I should have caught you earlier. And maybe you don't need to though. Sarah asks, Kathy, is there a way to see who is contributing to that Word document? I know Sierra and her students use different color text, but I don't know if there's an automatic way to see.
I think you could do track changes, not in the browser, but I did notice in OneDrive, and that kind of leads me to where does this go when you create it in Canvas. So I'm in my OneDrive. Don't look that this is, I was testing a piece of software in this, but that is the name of the class. So it will, in OneDrive, it'll make a Canvas folder for you and a folder for your class, and then the docs here. So if you hover over a document, you can see a little bit more about what people are doing, conversations around this, details, and how many views, and it also shows edits. If I click on this, it's even going to show, week by week how many since I just created it. But you can kind of see, I don't know if it goes down to the detail of Ed did this, Kathy did this. I think you could be able to put track changes on, but please don't quote me on that. But anyway, as long as I'm here, another thing you could do is, I was saying before, maybe you have a spreadsheet that tracks hours. I could, right through OneDrive, select here, and I could, let's pretend, this is my personal email address, but let's pretend that it is one of the community customers that the student's working with. I could say, you know, please fill out, et cetera, and send that if you wanted to. So they could also edit, or maybe you only want them to have view access, that type of thing.
So Kathy, you're saying that you don't have to be a UW, you don't have to be affiliated with UW Milwaukee, or you don't have to have a uwm.edu email address in order to use collaborations with the students. Is that correct?
Yeah, either you could send it, these are just, you know, you could share with, in fact, you could share with anyone. I wouldn't do that, but you can invite people that are not from UWM.
Cool.
From these. So anyway, that is in your OneDrive. But the thing that I think is a tremendous advantage is you really don't even have to touch that OneDrive at all. Your students don't either. And that was always the problem for me, is I'd tell the student, well, now you go click new, find OneDrive, do this, and then make sure you share it this way, not that way, or I try to share it. And there are so many moving parts, it becomes problematic. And I felt like the technology was kind of overshadowing the project. Whereas this will, and you can see, I just saw that Ed replied to, and that was to one of the documents here. I think this one. But anyway, so your student, you and your students can have a dialogue on this document throughout the semester. It's going to load slowly again. You and your students both would access this right from collaborations, and only the students who are invited to this document can see it, and the teachers, of course. So I actually, when I'm using this, I don't go to OneDrive at all. I really don't need to. I just go right into the document, and what I find helpful is I can look in at any time and say, ooh, you know, Ed really hasn't gotten a start on this project at all, or this is going in the wrong way. I might want to contact him or put in a comment. So that's something that kind of helps me track progress. And that to me is important because especially in an online environment, sometimes people do need a little more structure, someone checking in with them a little more, being a little more collaborative with the student themselves. Are there questions? Anything that you want me to address,
yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Okay.
So a couple questions. From Anne, can students generate their own sharing links out of OneDrive? And Anne, if you need more clarification, let us know.
You are the document owner. Are you talking about, can they create their own collaborative documents? Can they initiate it, or can they share it with other people?
Yeah, so imagine you created that doc and you added Ed as, you know, someone who's on it. Can Ed go into his OneDrive and then say like, oh, well, my teacher gave me this, but I'm now going to further share it? Is that possible, or is that locked down?
Probably he could. I'd have to check to make sure who is considered the document owner. If you and the student are, then you probably could, but I'm going to have to look because the students might just be considered editors. So I will get back to you right after the meeting on that. But I don't put major amounts of feedback in collaborations. I might put some coaching things, or, hey, you know, great idea, flesh this out type of thing. Then at certain steps in the project, so for instance, I just had a professor use this last week for literature reviews. she created these collaborative assignments. And it was just between her and one student, her and another student. And she put in a template that she wanted them to fill out, and she'd work with them all semester on getting these lit reviews done, and she'd have them turn in the document in milestone assignments. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I created an assignment by plus assignment, and then here are the settings. And you can grade it right in SpeedGrader. And then the nice thing about it is, so I just go to file uploads, okay? And I'm going to cancel out of this. And so the student will have an opportunity. I'm going to be a test student for a second. The student will click Submit Assignment, and look, Office 365. So the student, I'm not going to click on this because it's going to be pulling from my account, but the student would be able to find that document, upload it, submit it, and then I am going to get out of the student view. I uploaded something as a student a little while ago. I would be able to go to SpeedGrader, and I just want to mention that this, oh, that's not Ed. Oh, that's right, I'm in the wrong assignment. That he would be able, that this freezes the assignment is what I'm trying to say. The live assignment is right in collaborations, that's the live document. But when Ed as a student uploaded his work, it gives a copy of his work as of right now. It freezes it. It gives me a docx file, but it also gives me an annotations area that I could write on, etc. And give him a grade, it goes into the grade book, because otherwise, how you can't just go to collaborations and make it a graded assignment. You can, in collaborations, you can select as many people as you want to, as I was mentioning. So let's say you have a couple people working on an assignment, but you really don't want to create groups in your class for a number of reasons. You can just go to collaboration and you can select as many students as you want. I've also seen people use these as collaborative question and answer boards that anyone can ask, anyone can answer. Collaborative class notes, also collaborative voice over PowerPoint presentations, that type of thing. But especially for assignments that basically it's going to have multiple stages, whether it's a journal or it's a project with a number of stages. This is a way to kind of keep a live doc going between you and the student. There's one version of it, and it's just something that you and your student and the student's collaborators can have a dialogue right in. So are there any questions before I go on? Ed,
Sorry. There are some questions. I'm going to put those in the collaborative document, and then we can get to those because we're just running out of time.
Oh, okay. So, but anyway, I think that's really, I did want to mention when I have created these, there is a pretty significant delay between when the document appears here and when it appears in your OneDrive. Again, there will be a Canvas folder created and a folder created for your class. I don't even look here for like a day. It just seems to not show up. And this, again, is why I just like going right through here and just watching progress, that type of thing. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, and I can stay after if anyone has any. But that is it. Sorry to rush on that at the end, but just wanted to show you a more simple way to create collaborations in your class without even needing to use groups.
Kathy, thank you so much for that. That was really helpful, because I know I've always resisted / hated collaborations. And just hearing this kind of like, oh, this is a better way. And I saw Sarah mention this as well. Like, this is so much easier than having, going through Canvas where it's all kind of integrated and the students won't get lost in all those moving parts that you were talking about. And that it really streamlines the process and puts the focus on the assignment and not how do I share this appropriately with people. So that was really helpful, Kathy. Thank you.
Sure. And Michael, I'm going to create a video on this that's an instructional video, just that. So I'll have Lane send that out too.
Oh,
So if you
awesome.
just want to see how to do this, I will kind of create little modular videos for you and your students.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. And I will,
Sure.
I have those questions that I saw in the chat and a couple that I had as well, put right in here. So when we sent out the email, when I sent it out, fingers crossed Thursday, I will have those answers, and we'll have those answers there for you. And then also, clicking on the wrong thing, I had as well at the bottom here a link to a lot of the collaboration documents from Canvas community. So these right here in experiment 1 is really about learning about collaborations from the instructor's point of view. How do you set that up? How do you use that? There are some really good videos from Canvas, some good documentation as well. I also included our most common known issue as well. You can read a little bit more about that. And then also in experiment 2, I have a little bit about using a collaboration, and then how do you get your students to be using that. And really, it's about preparation. And I think Sarah and Cody and Sierra and Laura were talking all about getting your students prepped, and really the importance of walking your students through how to do a project and the meta level of doing a project. And I think that, they didn't even talk about collaborations, but I think they're talking about the same thing that I have referenced right here. And kind of getting students used to how to use the tool, why to use the tool, and then that way when they're using the tool like collaborations, they're doing the interactive, the group work, they can focus on the work and not on how to use it. And I think there's some good resources right here that you could share with your students for that. So that is the handout right there. If you don't have it, I'm going to put it in chat one more time. Come on, you. Copy that link, and then I'm going to put it in chat, and then we'll get out of here. And then afterwards, if you have any time, you feel free to stick around, and we'd be happy to ask questions, answer questions for you as well. Before we go, I want to put a plug out for the online and blended teaching program. We talked about community building, group projects, engaging your students, and a lot of that content is found on the online and blended teaching program from CETL. And you can go to uwm.edu /CETL. You can find out a lot more about that online and blended program, blended teaching program. You can learn about engaging your students, content creation, building a community, designing your course with students in mind. Those are all topics on the online and blended teaching program. So definitely check that out as well. And then thank you so much for everyone, to our presenters today, to Sarah, to Laura, to Sierra, to Cody. Thank you so much for bringing your ideas, to Kathy as well, to sharing about collaborations. And that's really what we're doing today, and all the great questions from the community. I really appreciate all of that. So thank you so much for your work, everyone, today. March 2nd, so a couple weeks break, March 2nd, Hillary Snow is going to be talking to us today, then about taking discussions to the next level. So, leveling up on our discussions and expanding your options to develop critical thinking online. So instead of just having a discussion of, oh yeah, I agree with the post that somebody just put in there, really thinking about how we can get our students to develop critical thinking even through discussions, and so how we can take a step up with that. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion, because boy, I'll tell you, my online discussions have really sucked. So I'm really looking forward to learning a little bit more. So thank you, everyone, today. Looking forward to seeing you again on March 2nd. And if you have any questions, feel free to hang around, and we'll be happy to discuss. Have a great week, everyone.